Well, hello, everyone. My name is Dahryn Trivedi, and I am part of a nonprofit organization called Divine Connection International. And this nonprofit constitutes an invaluable database for scientists attempting to understand the nature and power of consciousness and its influence over every aspect of life. The amount of research we've done extensive research in the arenas of life sciences and material science. This involves plants, animals, microbes, bacteria, viruses and fungi, seeds and soil. This also includes metals, ceramics, polymers, and chemicals. We've conducted preclinical research, cancer cells, healthy cells. We've also conducted 4 clinical trials. We have over 6,000 science experiments, over 670 peer-reviewed science publications. They're available with the National Institutes of Health, the US government, Ivy League universities, over 2,000 universities worldwide. And our scientific research is ongoing. And the most exciting research I would like to share with you today is about our most recent research on these 4 clinical trials. And before I go into the full details of exactly how we were able to produce these results, I want to share the results, the power of these results with you. Now, the length of the study was 6 months long. We had a group of over 100 participants in each of these clinical trials, and the age group was between 20 to 55 years of age, half women, half men. And we had volunteers all suffering from either some kind of mental, psychological, emotional, financial, or relationship problem in their life. We tested over 100 parameters in blood samples, as well as had a clinical psychologist on staff to conduct interviews and to determine any psychological assessments that these participants were experiencing. And these results are unprecedented. There is nothing like them that we will see in any other clinical trial to date. So a lot of the blood parameters that we measured were related to stress, anxiety, depression, mental health and calmness, immunity, inflammation, anti-aging, cognition and memory, hormonal balance, menstrual wellness, vitamin absorption, mental focus, insulin, inspiration, motivation, mood, libido, emotional trauma, sleep tiredness and fatigue. We measured things such as neurotransmitters, hormones, cholesterol. To give you an idea of how incredible and unprecedented these results are, I'm going to compare them with conventional methods of treatment to give you an idea of our best treatments available to us today versus the outcomes that we were able to replicate through these trials. Some of the most unprecedented aspects include our increase in the clotho-protein. Now, the increase in the clotho-protein, we usually typically measure the clotho-protein to determine anti-aging. A greater amount of clotho means greater youth, greater vitality. It is the true indicator of anti-aging, of reversal of aging, if we can somehow increase the clotho-protein. Most clinical trials, most studies have been able to produce marginal increases in clotho. Through our clinical trial, we've found a nearly 700% increase in the clotho-protein. This is far beyond any typical anti-aging results, and definitely not possible through the placebo or through human psychology. Another marker that we were able to increase is pro-inflammatory cytokine reductions by up to 95%. Now, if you look at all the chronic diseases that exist today, most of them are all trailed back to the root cause of inflammation. In fact, Harvard has come with a theory of disease in which all diseases might potentially have a root cause of inflammation. That inflammation is actually the cause of disease itself, including cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, everything that we're suffering from today that is on a rapid incline. Now, Our reductions by up to 95% are significant because if you look at the most aggressive biologic therapies available today, that are usually to treat very aggressive forms of cancer, severe autoimmune disorders, or moments in which it's life or death for someone and it requires severe forms of intervention to save that person's life. These are aggressive biologic therapies, and they come with their own risks, their own dangers, because they can either dysregulate the immune system, suppress it, the immune system, or they can upregulate it. They can cause severe problems. Our reduction by 95%, first of all, is not replicable by these biologic therapies, which typically have an achievement by 30 to 70% in reduction. And on top of that, they pose their own risks, and our results come with zero risks, only the benefits. On top of that, another unprecedented result is our increase in dopamine by 422%. Now, this is unusual because even treatments that target severe mood disorders, where increases in neurotransmitters are usually between 20 to 50% commonly. Our increase in neurotransmitters are far higher than typical outcomes that you see in most trials. 422% versus 20 to 50%. Oxytocin, over 400% increase. And this is rare outside of directly administering oxytocin to a particular person. And we're talking 400% without direct oxytocin administration. We're talking over 200% increase in vitamin D, over 20% increase in vitamin B12, and over 80% increase in vitamin C. Now, these participants signed waivers, made promises not to change any part of their lifestyle. They're eating the same way they were before, avoiding taking any supplements at all. They're living the same lifestyle before the treatment versus after the treatment. And this is in comparison to even the placebo control and the control group that received no treatment whatsoever. So even with our best therapies available to modern medicine, to science, we are not able to replicate these same results. And somehow the research we are doing, the research in which we're able to harness the power of consciousness, are able to produce these results. The beauty of science is that we can take away fiction from fact. We can remove all the excess, all the nonsense, and get straight down to the truth of the matter. Our problem, the problem of our modern day and age, is first and foremost, we are ignoring a vital part of human existence, a vital part of the human condition, which says there is something beyond the physical, something beyond what is visible, that is controlling and governing our lives. And the moment we ignore that, we forget that, it becomes an underdeveloped part of our human existence. We start to see that by not addressing this, we are in fact disconnecting ourselves from a very vital part that causes wellness, that causes prosperity, that causes success. And as a result, you will see this is the root cause of all the problems we see today. Our social unrest, our environmental degradation, our problems with health, the mental health epidemic. If you think the pharmaceutical industry is a prosperous industry, then you should look at wellness, because wellness is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, which is 4 times larger than the pharmaceutical industry. And what we see is, despite everybody seems to be talking about mental health, but if you actually look at the numbers of people who are suffering from mental health problems, you see the numbers are actually increasing despite the stigma decreasing. And on top of that, you see the wellness industry is booming as well. So if you would expect there to be a solution with either wellness, pharmaceuticals, our conventional methods of treatment, those numbers would in fact decrease instead of increase. It means we're missing something. We are not truly understanding the root cause of the problem or where true wellness originates from. And a lot of people misunderstand the methods by which we can raise consciousness. Look at the numbers of the wellness industry. See how they're booming, and the number of mental health disorders that we have today. All the chronic diseases and problems, they all stem from a lack of consciousness. That is the root cause. What I see in personal development and wellness, in health, all of these things are focused so much on processes that we ignore the outcome. We have become so intoxicated by the processes themselves that we forget the whole point of it, which is to have an outcome, to have something measurable by which we can recognize improvements in our lives. I think the idea of having a process, having something to follow, uplifts us enough. It gives us a moment of reprieve because we feel like we're doing something to change our lives. And that's why we switch from one methodology to another. We try new things. We meet new gurus. We meet new people, new teachers. We try out a multitude of different things because when one doesn't work, we get bored. And that boredom, that lack of feeling, instigates us to want to search out something new. And we felt something from something, so we feel like something's happening when in reality, it is either incremental or purely psychological. The problem with the wellness industry is because science and modern medicine have for so long ignored this vital part of human existence, which all of us feel. You are probably here on this call because you feel something. You are connected to something that is beyond the physical and you know it's real. You've had experiences with it. You feel it in your heart. You have these emotions that you feel have not been properly addressed or understood by maybe your healthcare provider, maybe a psychologist, maybe even just your family and your friends. You feel alone. You feel like there's something out there that you are connecting to, but you somehow do not have full access to. But you've seen miracles. You've seen things happen. You know it's possible. So when science ignores a vital part, something that is factual and real, this is not woo-woo mysticism that I'm sharing with you today. This is a factual reality. We've proven it with all of our scientific studies. In agriculture, we've seen increases in yields of crops by up to 500%, increase in immunity by 60%. Increases in immunity by over 600%. Increases in shelf life by over 100%. We've seen that when you can apply consciousness to bacteria, they suddenly respond to antibiotics that they have no longer been susceptible to. We see the superbugs finally respond to first and second and third generation antibiotics. We've seen decreases in viral loads. We've seen cancerous cells turn into non-cancerous cells. We've seen when the energy of consciousness is applied, it has the intelligence, it has the wisdom to discern between cancer cells and non-cancerous healthy cells, which it can kill the cancer cells and promote the viability of those healthy cells. And then we've seen these outcomes in these clinical trials that I've shared with you today. These participants did not practice a methodology. They did not apply a technique to their lives. They were simply able to harness higher levels of consciousness. Now the question is, how do we do this? How can we apply scientific outcomes, scientific practicality, factuality, to something that is so mystical and so out there like consciousness or the existence of God? Well, in the same way that if you were to add salt or sugar to water, right? Even if nobody saw you adding that salt and sugar to that water, you stir it around, it dissolves into the water. It looks like you have just clear, normal water. But the moment you taste the water, that water tastes salty or that water tastes sweet. That is the measurement to know that there is either salt or sugar in that water. So in the same way, scientifically, if there is something real that works out there that can raise consciousness, we should be able to see it scientifically in a laboratory setting with the most sophisticated technologies available on this planet. If we apply it to materials, we should say physical constants change. We should be able to measure it with the latest technologies used by NASA. Particle size analyzer, GCMS, LCMS, all the latest technologies that we use, we should be able to see changes, outcomes, reflections of that state of higher consciousness. If you were to take all the people who are successful, happy, and prosperous, there is something that they have connected to, something out there that they are able to touch upon, a way that they lead their lives, a way that they conduct themselves in the world, a particular muscle in terms of consciousness that they have learned to flex, that gives them this personal power that's able to allow them to get what they want in their life. And I'm here today to share with you what that power is. And I'm telling you, no matter what methodologies, no matter what practices or techniques, no matter what spiritual figureheads or people who are out there is only one power in this world, and that power is God. The divine, love, universal intelligence, consciousness, pure consciousness itself. Whatever terminology you want to use, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change what that thing is. The true source of manifestation, of prosperity, of success. We like to connect with God and limit it to a subjective experience. And that is why science has been unable to truly integrate and unite with spirituality and religion, because it has been for so long limited to faith and subjectivity. And faith and subjectivity, as wonderful and real as they are not measurable by science. Science likes something with weight, with mass, with viscosity. But in our inability to utilize the empirical data of science, we have denied ourselves outcome. We have denied ourselves the truth. Now, how do we produce an outcome? How do we harness this power of consciousness to create a life that we love? How do we use God? That sounds almost derogatory. How do we use God? I suppose the best way to say that is, how does God use us? If you look at the results of this clinical trial, what do they tell you about the nature of God? Think about it. The increase in vitamin absorption, the increase in oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine, neurotransmitters for feelings of wellness and well-being, neurotransmitters for love and happiness, vitamin absorption for good health, lower biomarkers for inflammation, meaning less stress. Our participants experienced nearly triple their income in some cases. Prosperity. harmonious relationships, individuals who wanted people to appreciate them in their environment. They suddenly found either they no longer needed that appreciation, or naturally people were drawn to them. They saw an inner light, an inner glow about them, and they just felt drawn. And these people were just in love, or they were happy in their presence, and they couldn't explain why. People who needed to have a divorce, who needed a separation, the divorce ended with peace and harmony on both sides. It ended easily and gracefully and quickly. Now, in a country like India, that is a very rare thing to have. All of these things tell you that the nature of God is peace. It is love. It is success. It is prosperity. It is the most caring, healing, and adoring presence, the most unconditional love you will ever experience in your entire life. It takes care of you. You can live your life knowing that you have something else that is there taking care of you, that is watching over you. You feel guided by a higher power. In the same way, a child can rely on their mother or their father and feel the lack of stress and the freedom, the unlimited freedom and joy of being a child and being unbound by the world. That is what it is like when this power is in your life. You have freedom again. If you truly look, the nature of consciousness is freedom. That's what it wants. Because prosperity is a state of freedom. Happiness is a state of freedom. Love is a state of freedom. All of these things that we feel that we associate with God is truly one thing and one thing only, and it is freedom. That is why the greatest gurus out there, the saints and sages, they all tell you something about God, and that is, God is freedom, enlightenment. So our ability to connect with this presence means that divine takes care of us. Our lives take care of itself. If you really look at it, if you fall down and you hurt yourself, do you need to tell your body how to heal itself? If you have a cut or a scratch on your body, do you need to tell your body what to do? And yet somehow we treat our minds very differently. We treat our minds as if there's something that we need to do to fix our minds, to heal the mind, to heal our depression or our sadness or anxiety. That there's something that we need to do on our part, that the effort is self-regulated and self-controlled, and it is beyond what is organic and natural for us. When in reality, the body has all the mechanisms in place to be able to take care of and heal itself. And similarly, the mind can do the same thing. Because the mind, the body are both just emanations of consciousness. Consciousness is in its essence the one thing that holds everything together, everything from atoms and molecules to human emotions and relationships. Consciousness is the doer, consciousness is the achiever. Now, unfortunately, because of our denial of this vital aspect of our lives, we no longer have a normalcy, a sense of normalcy by which all of us can openly talk about it and acknowledge it. We're born on this planet undeveloped, right? When a baby is born, a newborn, its brain has not fully formed yet. Its skull is still soft. In that state, it is in a state of absorption until puberty. And during that phase of its life, everything that it perceives and sees around them, and if you'll look into the scientific studies about psychology and the influence of other people's presence around us, it's not just what we're told that influences us, but it's the vibratory state, the emotions, right? The activities, the behaviors, the other perceptions of people around us that we associate with, that we start to mimic and replicate within our own brains, within our own chemistry, within our own circuitry of the mind. So if you look at the state of society, of our government, of what the paradigm that we're living in is, first of all, we don't believe in God as a whole, as a collective. We're ignorant to the true way that happiness is created because there are so many people who are miserable, so many people who are disconnected. We have so much suffering in this world that it's almost like we have established suffering as our natural state of being, when in fact it is very unnatural. We are handed down values, beliefs, and perceptions from other people, from third parties, and we're never taught to truly feel or connect to life itself, of our own doing, of our own accord. That is never taught to us. We are taught what to believe. We are never taught how to form a belief, how to form a perception, how to connect to life itself, how to learn how to perceive and think and feel. We are taught what to think and perceive and feel. And so if we understand that this consciousness is the root cause, it is everything from God, the universe, to our individual experiences of life, then the root of our being is consciousness. It is something called the soul, the Spirit of God. That is our divine presence. That is what we need to connect with and rely on to make things happen in our lives. Now, since we have not been taught how to feel and connect with this, right? A lot of children naturally, inherently have this connection, but because it's not popularly addressed and because there's so much we have to sift through even psychically on this planet, we have to deal with so many emotions and so many unhappy people that even the most sensitive souls that feel this presence, that are attuned to it, become hyper attuned to the misery and suffering of this planet, that they no longer feel connected to their own heart. And in this constant state of absorption, we create what you can refer to as like a coating, a layer over this light, this consciousness, this diamond, whatever you want to use, whatever terminology makes it easier for you to understand. We create a coating and ice around this divine presence within us that prevents us from truly connecting to it. So even when we practice all of the methodologies available, even when we meditate deeply, even when we try everything, yoga, acupuncture, therapy, all of these things, we try to do so much in our life. We're putting in 110% of our efforts to do better, to do more. We still somehow are not able to manifest the life that we want. It's like we're just barely there. We are a breath of a hair away from getting what we want in life, and we somehow just can't get it. It's because from that layer, from our past experiences of life, we are not truly connecting. Because it is from that connection itself that all of the practices, all of the methodologies, everything that we utilize actually has an outcome. We can reap the benefits of those things. Think of it, the participants in the study, it didn't matter that they ate more nutritious food or that they added supplements to their diet. They ate the same food they were eating before, but naturally, because of their heightened state of consciousness, because we were able to raise their consciousness, now their ability to absorb the vitamins and the minerals increased. Now, a lot of people, when we want to lead the lives or conduct our lives in the way that we want, We are relying on this pre-established programming. And the whole point of life is to regain that purity and that innocence of that consciousness, that pure, pristine state of consciousness. And that's what we call enlightenment. Enlightenment is seeing life in its most pure and pristine form. We like to mythologize it and make it something out, but in reality, it is more than a mystical experience. It creates a real ripple into our practical lives. We think that it is by controlling our desires or controlling life that we can have some kind of benefit, that we can become happy, that we can become successful. When in reality, if you look at the way that life works, the more you try and control it, the more you try and take control over your desires, the more they control you. But if you look at the nature of God, imagine people on a spiritual path somehow disassociate God from joy or God from pleasure. A lot of people sacrifice pleasure thinking that it's something that is not inherent to God. And they'd be very surprised to find out that God is truly ecstatic pleasure when you truly connect. God is bliss. God makes you weep with the amount of joy and love that is contained by that presence. Most people lead their lives trying to connect with happiness. Happiness is the goal of everybody. If there's something that you wanted in your life, if there's a goal, a desire that you have, whether it be a new car, a great job, whether it be living in a beautiful home or having a particular person in your life, a relationship, a soulmate, would you want any of those things if it didn't inherently have some kind of joy or happiness to it? Would you want a relationship if you weren't happy? Would you want the house if you weren't happy with the house? Would you want a car if you weren't happy with the car? It's happiness that we are looking for. It's this pleasure. It's this state of joy that we want. But it's because of what we've been programmed to see, right? That perceptual field of awareness that we've had programmed within us from childhood and through our own experiences of life, we've tuned out the true source of that happiness. And so we look around trying to find happiness in these other things from the identity that we form, that we've lost sight of where happiness truly comes from. It's not about controlling your desire for those things. It's rather about connecting with a higher pleasure, a higher love. If you needed light, right, and you had a candle, right, versus going outside in the middle of the day with the brightness of the sun, would you be relying on that candle anymore? Would you need that candle to see? Would you go outside and light a candle so you could see better? It's not necessary anymore. You don't even see the impact of the candle because the sun is so bright. That is the existence of God in our lives. That when God is there, you don't even need anything outside of that. And on top of that, that presence, that divine nature, because God is the true power that there is. God is the source. God is what governs and controls everything in life. God is our very substance as well as our essence. Then this nature of consciousness, if we know anything about what all the religious texts and, if you're connected to God on a spiritual level, you can feel that too, that God is self-contained. God is self-sustaining. God doesn't need anything outside of itself to sustain itself. So the nature of consciousness, the nature of God is self-effulgent. It shines with its own light. So when God is there, when the presence of God is there, the outcome is there. The outcome in our lives is there. You should not be fooled by whatever you're doing. Look at the outcome. Is your life a mess? Is your life in chaos? What kind of thoughts are in your head? Do you have ADD, ADHD, mental restlessness? Now, because of our inability to connect with this divine presence, because of that coding, from what, right, these secondhand ideas and thoughts and perceptions from all these people who are miserable on this planet, and we know we're very psychic beings. And science has also said that if you look at the receptors in our body, right, there are certain receptors in our cells that respond to vibration, they respond to energy. Right? In the same way that our receptors respond to nutrition, to vitamins, minerals, and hormones, there's one receptor for every kind, or multiple receptors, for every kind of vitamin, for any kind of hormone, for any neurotransmitter. There is a very specific receptor. Well, they found out there are receptors that also respond to vibration. If you look at people, if you look at energy, if you look at psychic energy, you see that if you're sitting in a room with someone who's miserable, you feel their misery. You feel uncomfortable being in the same room with them. Why? Because your cells, even within your own being, are responding to that energy. And in doing so, we've also seen that when two people are working together, there are a bunch of studies about this where, right, there's something called these neural pathways within our minds, within our brains. And when we found two people who are working together on similar projects, right, just by being in proximity with each other, without even talking or communicating with each other, just by association, they start to mimic similar neural pathways. Meaning they start to think the same thoughts, they start to have the same beliefs as the people that they are around. Well, imagine being a very psychic being, being a young child in a state of complete absorption. You haven't gotten to the point where you can even decide for yourself. The executive functioning of the brain doesn't even fully develop until I believe you're 28 years of age. So it's almost like we are programmed to believe life is miserable, to suffer. We have received so much confusing and conflicting and miserable outputs from so many people. It's like these radio waves that are just constantly hitting you from 8 billion people on this planet. And it is so difficult to decipher between the nonsense and your own divine, your own presence. In Buddhism, it's actually said that 99% of the thoughts you think are not your own thoughts. Only 1% of them are your own. And thoughts and emotions are tied very well together. So anytime you have a particular emotion, is it even your own? And since people don't know that this is what's happening to them, we try and create feeling in our lives because that's what we truly seek, is to feel. Right? Because we're yearning for this joy and this happiness. So we seek feeling. We seek to feel again. And in doing so, that's when we resort to all the things that are available to us today. We resort to alcohol, to drugs. We resort to binge watching television shows. We resort to food. We resort to gossip, to rumors. We resort to instigating things. We get reactionary. We fight with people because life isn't the way we wanted it to. And our attempt to do that is to fight. Because if we feel like it does something, it creates something, something's happening. The true nature of the soul speaks to us through something called intuition. And intuition means being in tune with that divine presence. That's what it really means. And I'll tell you what intuition is and what it's not. Intuition is not emotion. And that's where people get confused. Because emotion is a part of the brain that is a reactionary response, meaning anything that's reactionary is operating from a pre-programmed condition of the mind. So true emotion is not connecting with divine. We get so confused and we think that we're feeling divine. We think we're following our intuition when in reality we're following our desires. We're following what we want. We're following what we think we need in our lives instead of what divine is telling us that we need. And the moment our will is aligned with our delusions or our confusion or false thinking, that's when we lose energy. Our endeavors are fruitless. Our endeavors lead to more frustration or chaos in our lives. Things fall short. Things don't happen. There's a block. There's always something that gets in the way. We crash and we burn. Because the nature of the will comes from that divine presence. Will is the power of consciousness. The more we apply our will, the more we apply our energy to do something. But psychology says we have a very limited amount of willpower. If you look at somebody who's, following a very restrictive diet, for example, right? They're following it perfectly for like a month, and then suddenly at the end of the month, they see a chocolate cake, they take one bite, they can't control themselves, they eat the whole cake in 5 minutes. And then they suddenly think, well, it's too late now, I may as well keep going for at least today. I'll start again tomorrow. And then they go out of control, maybe even for months at a time. Their will gets depleted. So when we're operating within a closed system, there's something called entropy, in which there is a decay of energy. Things eventually turn into chaos. Chaos is prevalent in a closed condition of existence. When we rely on God, we have an infinite resource of energy, an infinite supply. So our will never runs out. Our enthusiasm, our motivation, our ambition never runs dry. The well never empties. The problem is we can't determine what is the will of God versus our own will. When our wills are aligned with the will of God, we find that everything in our life results in success. And when it doesn't, we're not concerned about it, because with that will comes faith. Faith that we trust in the process of life, that if it's not happening now, it doesn't mean it will never happen. It means now is not the right time. Or maybe you need to divert your energies, focus on something else. Maybe the reason you didn't get the job and someone else did is because you simply didn't have the skills for it. You didn't develop yourself to the point where you were more competent than that other person. Is it God's decision to say you are a better candidate simply because you want it more? God is present in that person just as much as you. Why are you more deserving? What makes you more deserving? We confuse our desires with deservingness. What makes us deserving? And I don't want you to get confused and think deservingness as if a quality of, am I worthy? It's not coming from a place of ego. It's coming from a place of non-judgment, practical thinking, which spiritual progress and higher consciousness is not devoid of practicality. In fact, I feel those who are more spiritual have more common sense, are far more practical and far more even-minded than those who are not. In fact, they're probably happy for that person who got the job, knowing that they deserved it. And that happiness adds to their happiness. And it inspires them to do better. So what I will say is there is a very vital part of life that we misunderstand or we don't truly see because we are so disconnected. And that is something called Dharma, the supreme reality. And all I'll really put into that in terms of terminology for the sake of this class is to say the Dharma are the divine principles and fundamentals. We exist because of the Dharma, and there is a way that we conduct ourselves in our lives that either increases the amount of energy, that willpower that we have, or it decreases it. They are the choices we make. They are the emotions we engage with, that we linger on. They are the thoughts we think. They are the people we have around us. They are the activities that we have, the things we do, the risks that we take. If you truly look at the things that bring you energy into your life, there's always a time in which you have to apply the will to make it happen. But you'll find that when you apply the will and you do something that you know is inherently good for you, not just because you desire it or you want it, but because you know it's good, because that knowingness comes through your intuition. It's not the psyche, it's not coming from a place of desire. You simply know, you have this calmness and this knowingness. Yeah, of course, if I don't eat a bunch of sugar right now, it's better for my health. Yes, exercising might be a good option for me right now. You have to apply the will to get up and get on the treadmill and start exercising. But the moment you're on the treadmill, the moment you're exercising, there is a power that comes over you that suddenly makes it easier, that sustains you. I know everybody has felt that. There is a particular time in which you get into a zone. And in that zone, things become easy. There is something that supplies you from a higher place, from a higher power, with more energy to sustain you in that moment. And the longer you engage in the things that are good for you, you see something happen in your life. You see your vibration raises, your consciousness starts to raise slowly, slowly, and you start to feel better in your life. You just have more energy. You feel happier. You feel more at peace. You're clear in your head. A lot of people who exercise say just have more energy. They're expending more energy, and yet they have more energy. Similarly, the way we think, when we are placing a judgment, when we are judging someone, or we are looking down on someone, or we are hating, or full of anger or rage, you notice that these emotions take away from your experience of life, don't they? They reduce you, they reduce your being, they limit your awareness. And you see this happening as a reflection in the amount of thoughts in your head. The more you are off the path, the more thoughts you have. So the true measurement of being on the path is conducting your life in a way that generates the least amount of thoughts as possible, where your mind can be focused and streamlined and only focusing on the things that matter. And when you can measure, are you reactionary? Are you reacting from a place of emotion? If you are reactionary, instead of responding to your life and its circumstances, you are not responding through that divine presence. You're responding through the brain and the body, the old programming you have. Think about connecting to this divine presence. How do you connect to your mother and your father? We think the divine is so mystical. We think that A true measure of spiritual progress is a big, shiny moment for us where we suddenly have to fight, take up arms, and work through something, when most of the things that are spiritual, that are opportunities for us to grow, are not shining or glistening at all. They're getting up in the morning and taking a shower. They're smiling at a cashier. They are having empathy and compassion for someone that you meet. They are self-sacrificing. They are discipline. They are all the things that are worthy of something, are the small things that add up over time. These are the arenas in our life that we lose the most amount of energy. The people that are around us that bring us back to those old triggers and those old programmings. All of these things deplete us and reduce our consciousness. So now no longer are we happy and successful and prosperous and well, but we also can no longer see the path, because that is also inherent to lower states of consciousness. We can't see life clearly because that stillness in the mind, which comes through higher consciousness, it's consciousness that controls the mind and makes it quiet. It's not the mind that makes itself quiet. It's God, it's consciousness that does it for us when we connect to it. We try so hard to do things through our thoughts and through our minds. We've removed ourselves from God. It's almost insane. The one thing that has the power, and we rely so much on ourselves, where all of our power comes from, is God. And we've disconnected ourselves from that very source. I don't know about you, I think it's very funny. We should laugh at ourselves more. Irreverence, joy. Laughter, they've seen, actually removes attachment. The more you can laugh at your life, the less attached you are. The more you can focus on what matters. The divine, that stillness in the mind, that is our true reference point by which we can measure our lives, by which we can see things clearly from. It is from that stillness within the mind that we optimate on a clean slate, a clean point of reference where we can truly see life clearly for what it is, and not seeing from a place of judgment, which comes from the mind and the emotions, but seeing it from a place of just that pure awareness. That pure awareness does not have judgment. That pure awareness does not have jealousy or anger or frustration. All these come from a place of lack or disconnection, from a place of an individual experience that we have relied on for far too long. Now, how we were able to replicate these results is the main thing I want to share with you today. Because I'm sure a lot of you have heard a lot of what I'm talking about, maybe in different contexts, spoken in different ways, and yet it still feels like hearing about it is not enough. Well, there are certain beings on this planet who, when their consciousness is high enough, there is no difference between that and the divine, them and that pure consciousness. When your consciousness, your awareness has suffused so perfectly with that pure, pristine awareness, that pure, unmodified, unadulterated consciousness, which is the divine, that is what we call enlightenment. And in that state of being, you become an embodiment of the divine. When we look at an iron bar and a magnetic iron bar, the difference between the two, one of them is channeling magnetic energy and one of them is just a normal iron bar that is unable to channel that same magnetic energy. All the atoms are chaotically arranged in that atom bar, and in the magnetic in the magnetic iron bar, All of the atoms are disciplined. They are lined up perfectly. And it is not the discipline itself that is channeling the energy, but the space between those atoms. And then naturally, this magnetic energy that already exists in its environment now suddenly is able to flow through those empty channels. And that is how that bar becomes magnetic. Its whole purpose, its whole function, the practical outcome of its existence changes, and it's measurable. It's able to even make other iron bars magnetic through its mere presence. So in the same way, the whole process of connecting, first and foremost, is to find that iron bar in our own lives, that magnetic iron bar. When we have somebody who is the embodiment of the divine, they can transmit this conscious energy, this enlightenment to those around them, anywhere on this planet. And through their presence, through the energy that they can send, right, through their divine blessings, this energy works as almost like a way of ungluing your old programming. It literally removes that coating around that divine presence so that finally you can feel it again. You get a glimpse of what that is. You feel it. It's like you can breathe. You're connected once more. You've found something real in a life of something that's so full of confusion and chaos. We haven't connected to it, and finally you have somebody who is connected that you can connect to. Because it's hard to do it on our own when we don't have a reference for it in our lives. When we are so lost and confused ourselves, how is it easy for us to connect unless we can rely on somebody outside of ourselves? So the light that comes from the enlightened, this light can dissolve those old barriers where you can truly connect. And then whatever you implement in your life, if it is in accordance with that divine will, with those divine principles and fundamentals, all of the things you do that align with that, the way you discipline and lead your life, when you conduct your life as perfectly as possible, you manifest more of this divine presence into your own existence. You continue to polish that diamond, to clear away those old barriers, those old coatings. Suddenly your awareness opens up to you. You see life in a new way, in a new light. You experience profound wellness. Miracles are there to show you the truth. Miracles are moments of grace where we transcend our own limited consciousness for a moment and we see what's really out there. Miracles are not foreign, blips in the matrix. Miracles are real. They are just what happens when we connect to what's real, if even for a moment. So when you experience a miracle, even being with the enlightened, you're connecting to what's real for a moment. And that moment of connection never leaves you. It stays with you forever. It changes you on such a fundamental level. We've seen things changes even at the cellular and DNA level, even at the atomic level. And that's what we do at Divine Connection International, this nonprofit organization, is we harness the power of enlightened consciousness to implement change in these non-living materials, in these living organisms, and in people's lives. And then whatever a person decides to do after that, in accordance with those divine principles. And when I speak divine principles, I'm talking about the things that give us more of that freedom in our lives. Consciousness's whole purpose is to flow through us, to organize, integrate, and evolve our beings, to a point in which it finally reaches this point of freedom. So our whole lives is about trying our best to follow these divine principles and fundamentals, which is compassion, love, selfless giving, sacrifice, being non-judgmental, suspending judgment for a moment, taking someone by the hand and listening instead of talking all the time. Right? All of these things that when we're connected to our divine presence, which the enlightened help us do that, we can finally feel the impact that certain choices and decisions and actions make on our own consciousness, on our own thoughts. And we can lead our lives in a way that allows us to harness even higher levels of consciousness. So one day we too can become free. We too can become enlightened. It's not enough just to meditate deeply for a few hours a day. If you can conduct your life as perfectly as possible. Think about it. If you go into a grocery store and you're looking for tea bags, if you're looking for a particular type of tea, you go to the shelves, you can't find it, it's hidden behind a bunch of other teas. You pull it out. If you just spend a few moments of your time pulling out all the other tea bags and aligning them, some people might think, it's not worth my time, it's not my job. But if you're there and you're thinking, well, what if somebody else wants that tea bag as well? And you take them all out and you align them and you get what you want. You've also laid out the path for other people to help get what they want. A small, simple decision, a small choice like that, a small action in our lives where we try and mimic or create perfection as much as possible, this divine perfection. The next person that goes into that grocery store reaps your benefits. They reap the benefits of your actions and your decisions. That is the manifestation of a higher power, to a very small level of an example. Now imagine that with enlightenment. Imagine that on a much higher level. The more we lead our lives with discipline to follow these principles, the more we deprogram, the more we starve our old pathways, our old ways of being, and the more we engage with new paths, new adventures, new opportunities. The more we see new selves, new parts of ourselves emerge that we might never have known has existed before. So if there's anything that I want to leave you with, it is no matter what anybody says, what our science has proven. And if you look at the root of all religion and anybody who has become enlightened, they always came enlightened through someone else who was enlightened, through their association with the enlightened, through a direct connection with God themselves. Because that's what the enlightened do, is they connect you with that divine presence yourself, so that through your own connection, divine brings whatever you need into your life. And what we've seen through our science is that, yes, enlightenment, divine, can be proven. It does have an effect. It has a practical outcome that can be measured and identified. So you don't have to rely on belief or faith alone. It is real. Most people end up with false teachers because they become so intoxicated by their own desires of what they want that teacher to be for them, that they don't actually even see the teacher themselves. They are almost hypnotized by their own consciousness, the power of their own psychologies to persuade them of anything, that they don't end up with a teacher that actually creates something in their life, makes them do something, forces them out of their comfort zone and makes them take risks, makes them do something different, forces them to become a different person, to be better and do better. They are told what they want to hear or hear what they want to hear, and they become very comfortable, and that is the worst place for spiritual growth and progress, is to become complacent. So I'll say, if you want to connect with this divine presence and manifest the beautiful outcome of that presence in your life, find an enlightened teacher. It doesn't matter who it is, where it comes from, somebody that you can connect with at the level of your heart, at the level of your soul, and feel that presence and see the outcome in your life. Find that teacher for you. Learn how to see, how to perceive on your own through that connection with that teacher. Clear the old garbage away, clear all the other people's, all the influences from all around you away, and come back to that still small voice within you, the intuition, which always will guide you to your success and your happiness, because that is what God wants for you. God wants you to be happy. God wants you to be successful, because that is freedom. That is God's nature, and God seeks God. So, if there's anything that our research at Divine Connection has shown me that I want to share with you, and from my own experience, it's that you are so incredibly loved. You are taken care of more than you realize, and you are not alone. So, enjoy your life.